Bob, I'm going to tell you a little bit about yourself, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You, Robert Zugby, and your wife, Dia, have lived in Greenbelt since your marriage in 1977, first in Greenbrier and later on Ridge Road. You served as the first president of the Greenbrier Community Association, and you were a co-founder of the first chair of the Greenbelt East Advisory Coalition. You interrupted your professional career as a science teacher for about 13 years and went into an audio-visual production business with your father. You had just closed this business when you became involved in what would become Greenbelt Access Television, also known as GATE. That was in the mid-'80s. You retired from your career as science teacher in 2008. Currently, you are the chair of the Outstanding Citizens Selection Committee, a position that you've been holding for about 20 years. And you also help judge the Greenbelt Labor Day Parade. You are also the current chair of the Ethics Commission of the City of Greenbelt. You served as the president of the Board of GATE since it became incorporated in December 1986 until March 2019, a period of almost 33 years. What is public access TV?
All right, public access TV is something that came about because of the prevalence of both cable television and handheld cameras, which became available, as far as I know, in the early 80s, possibly late 70s. I'm not quite sure of the entire history of this, but my first my first contact or knowledge of public access probably came from watching Saturday Night Live and the spoof of public access that they used to do, and became a movie actually. So that was the sort of thing. Public access is the making available of television production to people who are not professional producers or technical people in that field. It's the basically the person in the street who decides to pick up a camera and tape something and then put it on for broadcast. Okay. And that's basically what public access is.
And how is public access TV financed?
It is financed through the funding provided by the cable franchisees, who, in this case, in Greenbelt, Comcast and Verizon are the two franchisees for cable television, and they collect this as part of the monthly billing for their customers. So if you have cable television, you're paying maybe $3 or $4 a month in what is called PEG, which is public access, education, and government access. And this fee goes to the municipal government, which then disperses it for public access and whatever other needs under that heading that it goes to. So it comes from the cable companies through the municipal government to GATE and also to the Greenbelt government.
And when was public access TV established in Greenbelt?
It was probably established before I was connected with it, in the sense that the Greenbelt channel was being run by the city, and they probably did some public access I wasn't all that familiar with at that time. We became established as GATE to handle this part of the PEG funding. As you said, in December 1986, we were incorporated.
And what role did you play in this exactly?
It may have been 84, or certainly by 85, the city had advertised that it was setting up a committee to advise it on what kind of structure to set up for public access. I, at that time, was involved, as you mentioned before, in in audiovisual production, and I thought I had some expertise, at least some knowledge of the technology and so forth, and so I volunteered for the committee. I was appointed to the committee. In fact, I was appointed as chair of the committee by City Council. And it was that committee that recommended the kind of structure that we have, and which itself became, in effect, the first board of directors of Greenbelt Access Television from December of '86 until the first annual meeting, which was held the following March, 1987. And then it was made formal by election of the membership, which at that time basically was the board of directors.
Mm-hmm. Whose idea was it to establish the PEG stations in Greenbelt?
Good question. I don't really recall that. I don't know when. It was Congress that passed the law to allow for this, and put it in the hands of the FCC. I don't know when it was first brought to the attention of City Council, or how they decided to go about this. They were already running their own city channel, and it was probably a consultation with their people, and it came out in, as I say, about 1984, 85.
And so what happened in December of 1986? Is that a significant year?
Well, it's significant because it was the actual recording of the Articles of Incorporation for Greenbelt Access Television. By way of process, what the committee did was to examine what other communities were already doing with respect to public access, and determining how much of that, if any, we could adapt in Greenbelt. We looked at Bowie, we looked at College Park, we looked at Hyattsville, we looked at Bladensburg, and we took a look at Tacoma Park. In some cases visiting these stations, or their representatives visiting us. And we saw that there were a couple of models. In one kind of situation, the city ran public access and government access under one roof. That is still the case, I believe, in Laurel today. In another model, the people formed a corporation which handled public access, and by contract also government access. Since the city of Greenbelt was already doing government access, we suggested the separation of government access from public access, and the city would continue to run government access on its channels, and GATE, the corporation that we recommended setting up, would do public access. And that's what we recommended. We drew up the Articles of Incorporation with the help of the city's attorney, and this was approved by City Council, and in 1986 we were registered as a corporation.
Do you remember who else was on the board who served in the beginning? Some other well-known Greenbelters, perhaps?
The names that come to mind right now, and not all of them do. I'm getting too old to remember some of this. Conrad Hurling was with us, not from the very beginning, but soon after. Another name that many of us remember with a great deal of regret for his passing, Doug Love, was part of our board for a long time. Another person who has passed was with the board, for a while was Eunice Coxon. I don't know if anybody, many people would remember her. She died several years ago. She was one of Greenbelt's most outstanding Republicans. And then there were others that were involved from time to time.
1995 and 1996 were important years for Gate. Tell us what happened.
Basically what happened was that the community center became available for our use, and the PEG funding made it possible for us to have an annual budget under which we were able to hire an executive director. That is what kicked us off with the structure that we basically have today.
Who was Chell Forsting?
Okay.
And he became the first executive director.
He was the first executive director. Once we had established the PEG funding and we had a location, we advertised for executive director. This was the birth of Gate as it began to really function. Prior to that, we had purchased a demonstration camera, a high 8 camera from Luskin's, which was a store at Beltway Plaza at the time. They've since closed down. And I had a part-time job there, so I latched onto this. We did things like, without a studio, one of our first productions was since the city was broadcasting the Labor Day parade, we decided that we would ride in the Labor Day parade and photograph the audience. And that was one of our first things. We also took a booth in the Labor Day Festival, the framework of which I stored in my basement for a long time, since we didn't have any other facility. And in that we set up a camera and invited the people to make their videos as they came by. And the greatest response we had was from young people. And that alerted us to the idea this is a major endeavor. Since I had been a teacher also and was going back into that profession, I was very concerned. This is a great way to expand our service to the community, was to involve young people.
Wonderful. Now, after the death of Mr. Forsting in September 1998, which other people acted as executive directors?
Well, I should say this about Chell Forsting. Even though he was the executive director for only a short time, he very much set the tone for a lot of what we were going to do. We interviewed, he had been running the public access operation in Dundalk, Maryland, which is where he was from. And I remember asking him and interviewing him if he was familiar with digital. And he wasn't. But he said he was anxious to learn it. And this made an impression. He had a very outgoing personality and a very determined, he says he was going to put Greenbelt on the map.
Adaptable to change.
That's right. So we hired him. Now when he died after about a year with us. It was a tremendous loss. But the biggest, the most influential executive director we had, of course, was Malia Murray, who was with us for a long time. And she had the technical expertise and organizational abilities to fill that role for a long time.
Now, tell us about Gates' relationship with Greenbelt's city administration and other volunteer associations in Greenbelt.
Well, first of all, the relationship with the city is separate from other relationships. We are established as a city chartered corporation. We provided that one member of our 9-member board of directors, this is in the Articles of Confederation and in the Articles of Incorporation rather, and in the article and in the bylaws, be appointed by City Council. The money we get from the PEG funds comes through the city. The space in the community center is provided by the city. We're paying rent, but it's sort of a mutual arrangement. We have always had a close working relationship with municipal access, with the city, in that at first we were using their channel, we were utilizing a lot of their technical expertise. As we began to grow our own expertise, we began to provide assistance to the city when they needed help. So it's been a back and forth thing. Now we are paying rent for the studio space in the community center, offset by whatever services we provide to the city. So that's an ongoing relationship there. Other organizations, the closest relationship that we have is with GAVA. We have a memorandum of understanding with GAVA. I mentioned before that we had a history of trying to find a way to work with young people. GAVA wanted to provide animation training to classes of young people. George Koschel was their artist. He has been an artist in Greenbelt for many years, and he was teaching animation, and we formed a working relationship with GAVA. And those classes are ongoing and growing, and they've been very successful. We've had several entries and winning entries in animation film festivals and so forth that George has run.
What is the role of the council liaison to Greenbelt Access Television, and who has held that position over the years?
That person is not elected by the membership. It's appointed, he or she is appointed by the city council. It hasn't always been a member of council who has occupied that function. At one time, it was the person who was running the city's municipal channel, not the current one, but at the very beginning. Since then, Tom White, as a member of council, was our council-appointed member of the board for a long time. He also became treasurer, and was really very influential in the development of GATE. And we miss him a great deal. That was one of the crises we faced when he passed away.
How different do you think GATE is now from how it started?
GATE obviously has gone through a history, and it's been an evolution. When we started as public access, without knowing quite how we were going to do it. We have grown from a membership of the board of directors to one that is several times that. And we have taken on as we got involved with the kids, young people, we started off trying to involve them. At the time, a popular television show was Beverly Hills 90210. Well, we established a television series with the children called Greenbelt 20770, and we would meet in their homes, and they would talk about what they were doing in schools and this sort of thing. This changed a great deal when we established a relationship with GAVA, and George Koschel came on board. Now it's one of our big operations is doing with the children. A second great change was with people who wanted to do the film festival. And this came about from the Gervasis and others in the community. We got together with them, and so we produce, and we've been doing it for 15 years, I guess, the Utopia Film Festival. This was a major change for us. At the beginning, there were a lot of headaches associated with this. We didn't know if we were going to lose our shirts or what, but it's worked out very well. The latest change was, as I said, in the past couple of years, when we decided to add the educational mission to the public access mission. This, first of all, enables us to adopt as educating the Greenbelt public what is available in the community, showing other communities what we do in Greenbelt, and also to provide a level of professionalism in our finished product that you can't provide with public access, which by definition is relatively unskilled. And that the major challenge we face with that now is making sure that we do not neglect one for the other. We are still public access, and we're also doing education.
The Federal Communications Commission, a government agency, better known, as the FCC, recently changed some of its rules regarding the funding of public access. This could cut or even eliminate funding for cable access stations. That's going to be a challenge. Can you explain this for us?
Of course, the cable companies generally have never been very happy with having to collect and distribute PEG funding. They've considered it pretty much a nuisance and have been looking for ways to dilute it or cut it out entirely. The FCC's recent ruling enables the cable company to charge against the PEG funding charges for operating the channel, which we broadcast on through their service. This would be a first for this, and it depends on how they evaluate what level of funding they value the service, how much that would cut into PEG funding we actually receive. It could cut into it very little. It could cut into it. It could take it away.
Time to contact our congressmen
and
senators.
We're involved now in actions with the city. It's going to affect the municipal access as well as public access, and through our association with other cable producers throughout the country. There is an organization, a community media organization that we are involved in, who are petitioning Congress and the FCC to preserve PEG funding as it was originally designed.
Where'd you find the inspiration and the endurance to serve as president for so long?
As I said, I volunteered because I felt I had some expertise, which is interesting because that expertise quickly became null and void. My expertise was with tape, magnetic tape, and editing involved cutting and splicing. It was just audio. Since we went digital immediately, and eventually tape was replaced by other digital conveyances, my expertise meant nothing shortly after the founding of the corporation. As far as why I've stayed so long, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just stubborn, or I sort of saw this as kind of my baby. Well, I wasn't alone in this by any means. It just, I just had to, when going through one phase, I wanted to see what the next one would look like, and so I've stuck with it.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, my plan is for the future. I want to stay connected with Greenbelt Access Television, but I'm trying to cut back some of my extracurricular, as we say, or it become, since I retired, it's become my only activities is, as I get older, we have grandchildren, and I just want to be able to have more time on my own to involve with family and this sort of thing.
Bob, you have served on committees and boards for several Greenbelt organizations beside GATE, and in most, if not all cases, you served on them as president and chair. Are you a natural leader? What are the characteristics that have helped you successfully chair so many various committees and boards?
Whether they're successful or not is for others to judge. Part of my being selected for president of this, chair of that, this sort of thing, is probably because I became noticed as probably president of the Greenbrier Community Association at the time. And so people pigeonhole you, and you know what they know you as.
Does the work.
Yeah, and that was mostly accidental. As far as my, I don't know what makes me successful or unsuccessful. It depends on how you look at it. My mode of operation is not so much getting involved in the activity of the organization as it is in recognizing that everybody there has something to offer. Very little of what GATE has become, for example, was my idea. It's other people's ideas, and having these ideas, sometimes contrasting, sometimes opposing ideas, balance out so that everybody has a role to play, plays into the encouraging of ideas from different sources to actually take the stage and get tested and developed. And I think this is one thing that has made GATE what it is, and other organizations. As for the Ethics Commission, that's a rotating thing anyway, so that has nothing to do with any abilities on anybody's part. But for GATE, I think the idea for the children's animation came from one source. The idea for the Utopia Film Festival comes from another. The expansion into it was my idea to expand into educational programming in order to accommodate the ideas that others were proposing to make the productions more polished and more professional. That's how I saw my role as a facilitator. How can this be done without violating this, without upsetting the balance of what we are set up to do? And it's worked pretty well as far as I can see, as far as GATE is concerned.
Well, Bob, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you very much.